it was basically an unjustified expense, right? For a simple traveling app, $80,000 estimated, ends up $59 million. Doesn't really make sense. The Auditor General's report outlines that they were not able to track a lot of things that were missing because, well, there's no paperwork. They don't know how to track them anymore because they were never documented. The app crashed a lot. There were a lot of bugs. The user experience, very complex and very confusing. I mean, you really had to know where to go in the app if you needed to get something done. Hi everyone, I'm Shubham and welcome back to my channel Lost in Canada. What's happening in Canada, right? Every day, new scandals, new scams, new controversies. The latest in town, ArriveCAN app. Pretty sure that everyone knows about it or somehow have used it. But what did the app did? What was the app's purpose? And why is Justin Trudeau being tagged along with it? I mean, I think almost everything that has happened in the past 8 years, Justin Trudeau is to be blamed. But the guy's never going to take the responsibility for it. So let's just say, why did we have this app? What was the purpose? The cost, the questions, what did the Auditor General said, and how is it related to Justin Trudeau? We'll cover everything in this video. So get ready. So the ArriveCAN app, first released in April 2020, it was meant to make border crossings easier during the COVID-19 pandemic, but it became very controversial as soon as it came out. People were concerned about its high cost, the way it was developed, the glitches, the UI experience, the privacy issues, and the data handling. And people even asked, like, did we even needed the app in the first place? And of course, it became a mandatory part of travelers entering Canada by land, air, or sea. And the app basically collected traveler information, where you were going, where you were coming from, health data, if you had COVID, what tests you've gone through, blah, blah, blah. So basically an app that would just collect all the traveling information of all the travelers and keep them safe. So the burning questions, the cost. I mean, what about the ballooning budget of the whole project? Well, when initially introduced, the app was estimated to cost around $80,000, but multiple development phases, contracts, government, oh, well, let's say the Liberal government nearly spent $59 million dollars as of the latest audit. And it's basically a mismanagement and a lack of value for taxpayers' money. I mean, $59 million dollars for an app that was estimated that could have been made in 80,000, let's say 100,000, 59.5 million. And as soon as the app was released, it was not greeted with a smile. People were demanding answers. It was basically an unjustified expense, right? For a simple traveling app, $80,000 estimated, ends up $59 million. Doesn't really make sense. But the one primary focus of this entire controversy is the awarding of, let's say, a significant amount of contracts to the firm called GC Strategies. The Auditor General report basically notes that multiple instances where contracts were given out, basically rewarded with very little competition, and even going through the necessary qualifications to provide such huge amounts of money and contracts to a small firm, GC Strategies. Never even heard the name. And adding insult to the injury, the Auditor General's report basically uncovers all these practices on how basically all these contracts were given out to GC Strategies, a single firm. And honestly, the accountability concerns that pop up are are just concerning. The lack of transparency, for one, the proper bidding process, and of course, the paperwork. The Auditor General's report outlines that they were not able to track a lot of things that were missing because, well, there's no paperwork. They don't know how to track them anymore because they were never documented. Now, let's move from the money part of the scandal to the user experience, the functionality of the app. And honestly, it was not appealing. The app crashed a lot, there were a lot of bugs. The user experience, very complex and very confusing. I mean, you really had to know where to go in the app if you needed to get something done. And I know I was at the airport, all the travelers coming in, the Canadians coming in, basically, standing in a group trying to enter all the information into the app, which is again, for people, or I would say the elders, it's a stress, and it just basically shows that they're not really familiar with the apps and the whole, I would say, computer era. So it was really difficult for the elder generation to go through this, and let alone the whole buggy experience of the app was very frustrating. Another really important point that was raised in the Auditor General's report was the privacy concerns. As with any other app, this app also had a lot of data to store, but this data was really sensitive because it was all the information, personal information about the travelers, their passport information, their health details, so a lot of sensitive data. There was a lack of clarity around how this collected data and information was going to get stored, who would have access to it, and for how long. So as soon as the app came out, a lot of people started raising their concerns about a potential scenario where this information would be stored with some law enforcement agencies without any warrants or any guidelines, basically. After the Auditor General's report, we basically understood that this whole ArriveCAN saga was basically mishandled. Canadians basically think that they've witnessed a potential waste of public funds, which undermines their trust in government efficiency and accountability. This scandal has basically underlined a really important part, that is having transparency in between, government contracts and making sure that they're done in an ethical way, which is really important, right? Because it's taxpayers' money, right? It shouldn't go to waste. So the first few points, or the lingering questions, is the mismanagement of the public funds, the government oversight. Of course, there was a lack of transparency in procurement, and the essential processes that go in, such as having a privacy impact assessment done. That was not done. The management was not responsible at all. CBSA, the Canada Border Services Agency, they didn't follow, the practices or the best practices, or even, let's say, ethical practices that they were supposed to follow. Inadequate documentation made it impossible for the Auditor General to even determine the full cost of ArriveCAN. That's how big the scandal is, basically. Then there's clear evidence that the government officials may have interfered in the selection of contracts. Again, favoritism. And then the app basically, it didn't really offer any value, right? It was just basically an extra step for travelers who were entering Canada. It didn't really meet any goals. So we've now discussed about the app, what it was supposed to do, what it actually did, and all the lingering questions like the cost effectiveness, the data privacy issues, the basic functionality of the app. We've discussed all this, but there's one person, one name that we haven't, and that is Justin Trudeau. It's difficult to prove if he was directly involved in the scandal, but I think that there is some evidence that somehow makes him involved, and that is simply that his cabinet ministers were involved in this. So CBSA, Canadian Border Security Agency, and Public Health Agency of Canada, FAC, the ministers were working together to develop the app, and of course, those ministers they report back to Justin Trudeau. So very hard to believe that he didn't know, or at least he didn't know what decisions were being made. And if that is the case, then that's an overall oversight on his part. There's no transparency right now. No one knows how government contracts are being given out in the public. So we need to have some sort of transparency. But again, as I said, there's not a lot of hard evidence that directly involves Justin Trudeau with this scandal. But there is some, and that some evidence cannot be ignored. Even though the app, the ArriveCAN app, was suspended in 2022, there's still a lot of questions, even after the Auditor General's report, that are still hanging around. And the public is basically not happy with the answers that they have received so far. For example, did the ArriveCAN app help in any way from stopping and basically spreading the COVID-19? Was all the information collected, was it proportionate to the public health crisis at that time? The health information, all the personal information that was collected. And of course, people who are involved in this, will they ever face any consequences? Like all these questions, I have them. Again, this controversy is still unwrapping itself. So we'll know more about this, but hopefully this video gave you a good understanding of what the basic controversy was, and who was involved, who needs to be basically accused of defrauding the entire country. So yeah, let me know. Please use the comment section below, and please like, share, subscribe this video, and share it as much as you can. And I will be bringing more videos, hopefully about Justin Trudeau, if he doesn't, stops with his controversies. But anyways, thank you very much, and have a nice day.